An important part of the image of strength that the Iranian regime was trying to maintain has just collapsed. This Tuesday, March 31, 2026, Masoud Pezeshkian indicated in a conversation with the President of the European Council, Antonio Costa, that Tehran is willing to end the war with the United States as long as it receives guarantees that new attacks will not happen again. The statement was seen as a gesture of retreat, not of firmness, because after weeks of promoting resistance, confrontation, and open defiance to the West, the regime is now asking for protection to stop the war. What this statement shows is simple. The strong leader narrative has been shaken. When a government says it is ready to end the conflict, but makes it conditional on guarantees against new attacks, it makes it clear that it has felt the weight of the pressure, and that's exactly what the market understood. On Wall Street, American stocks soared after the news, with a strong rise in the main indexes, while oil weakened. The movement happened because investors understood that Tehran showed signs of strain. It was not seen as a demonstration of control. It was seen as a sign of pressure, and there is an even more important point. Pezeshkian speaks on behalf of the Iranian presidency, but he is not the one who holds the supreme command of the war. The very structure of the regime makes this clear. The Iranian constitution establishes that the president heads the executive branch, but keeps matters directly related to the leadership out of his hands. The supreme leader, on the other hand, has among his powers the command of the armed forces and the authority to declare war and peace. At the same time, the Revolutionary Guard is seen by analysts as one of the most powerful structures in Iran, with decisive influence precisely in the areas of defense, security, and external conflict. In other words, Pezeshkian's statement has political value, but it does not end the war by itself. It looks more like a message from the regime than a final command decision. This helps explain why this statement affects the image that Tehran was trying to project. Throughout the entire crisis, the regime tried to appear unshakable, willing to keep the military confrontation going, the partial closure of strategic routes, and pressure on global oil. But now the rhetoric is changing. Instead of talking only about resistance, they start talking about guarantees. Instead of projecting total confidence, they begin to show concern about the next wave of attacks. This change in tone doesn't seem like someone who's fully in control of the situation. It seems like someone who realized that the cost of war has become too high. The very context of Hormuz reinforces this. The Iranian regime has been using the strait as a pressure tactic, restricting the passage of vessels it considers hostile and contributing to one of the biggest recent disruptions in the energy market. About 1/5 of the world's oil and liquefied gas passes through this route. When Iran threatens or blocks this corridor, it tries to show strength. But when, at the same time, its president goes to Europe to ask for guarantees for the attacks to stop, the contradiction becomes clear. The confrontational rhetoric continues on one side, but the request for protection appears on the other. And this combination weakens the pose of invulnerability that the regime wanted to maintain. It's also no coincidence that this statement comes up right now. The United States Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth, stated that the coming days will be decisive and warned that the war could become even more intense if there is no agreement. At the same time, reports indicate that Trump would be willing to end the military campaign even without immediately reopening Hormuz, which shows that Washington is trying to turn military pressure into a political outcome. In this scenario, Pezeshkian's statement sounds less like a sovereign initiative and more like a response to the deterioration of the Iranian position. Pezeshkian tried to present a controlled exit, but what the world saw was something else. The regime that wanted to appear immune to the shock now shows that it needs a way out to prevent the attacks from continuing.